Hey guys, welcome to another weekly focus. I hope you had a great trading week, and if you didn't, there's another week for you to correct your mistakes and see if you can do something better. So let's get straight into it. Let's do a trade recap, and I'll show you the trades I had from last week and this week as well. So let's start with gold. So I had a buy position on gold right here. I took this one on the 3rd of September. So I went in on the buy position for gold. My aim was to take out these highs to see if prices can take out these highs. So I moved my stop loss to break even once price started moving, and then eventually I closed this position at say 1%, and that was it for gold. Now for the S&P and for the NAS trade, the ones that had the wide stop loss, I closed the S&P one at plus 1%, went in for another buy attempt, and this took me out at -1. So I just didn't make anything from this one because I had +1 and then -1. With the NAS one, stop loss also was very wide during the first trade. The same thing with the S&P. So eventually I closed this at 0.73%. So when I did the updates last week, I was at 0.6%. Finally closed it at 0.73%. It's not a lot. So when you're swing trading, sometimes because my stop loss is usually very wide as well, my risk to reward is never high like that. So sometimes I get proper entries, like really good entries, and I probably have say 1:4, 1:5. But in a case like this, all I could do was just go out with say 0.73. So that's it for NAS, that's it for the S&P, and let's look at BTC. So with the BTC one is a little bit funny because I think around the 18th of September, I had this buys on BTC. So as this moved to the upside, I had 0.28% secured. I saw a sell position or a sell opportunity. I went in and then I closed this at break even for the sells, and I still had my buys open as well. So I closed the buys eventually at 0.28%, and currently I took another buy. So currently I'm in on a buy on BTC. So I'm just going to show you when I don't really analyze BTC, but I'm currently in on these buys on BTC, and I'll analyze the charts and then we'll see if this position it's most likely going to play out or going to stop me out. So I'm going to hold this one over the week as well. So over the weekend, coming into next week, I'm going to be holding the BTC one. So that's it for the trade recap, and let's see if there's anything building up for next week. So the first thing we have to look at is the DXY, and I'll go through the DXY real quick so we're not wasting a lot of time. I'll start from the daily time frame, which is the highest time frame I'm looking at, and we'll take it one step at a time. So first things first. So what am I looking on the DXY? So currently the DXY is moving to the down. So the DXY has been moving to the downside. So this is very easy because you see price taking out this lows, so price has been making new lows, and up until this point price took out this low as well. When I did the focus last week and the week before last, this is the area I was concerned about, all these consolidations like this, and I had this 50-50 I had this 50% probability for prices to go to the upside over prices to go to the downside. So now looking at it, I'm going to clean this. So looking at it and looking at what's happening right now, we had prices taking out this lows, giving us this move to the downside, and right now prices is trading to the upside. So with prices trading to the upside, it doesn't mean the sales are completed yet. So when you look at it, this could simply be a pullback for sales to continue again. So there are several ways I'm going to look at this right now. So the first thing is I'll just modify the psychological level. So price has traded through 102, so the next level price has to go to, if I modify this one, so if that was 102 for the highest one, the next one has to be 103, and that's quite easy to place. So the thing with psychological levels is you really don't have to look back in time to see if price was respecting certain levels. You know these round numbers and you know how to play with it, and it's really straightforward and it's very easy. So once price moves from one psychological level, I'm expecting prices to go to the next one. So right now price went through 102. So just going off of this principle of psychological levels, price went through 102. So the next level price has to get to has to be 103. So if nothing stops this move, if nothing stops the buyers, then the next level they have to test has to be 103. Now there's several ways prices can get to 103. So, and prices can even go above 103. So we can see prices moving all the way to the upside. And if price has to move to the upside, how is it going to move to the upside? So just as we had prices moving to the downside, pulling back, selling, moving and selling, if price has to move to the upside, price has to give you an impulse, give you a correction. And if a correction is coming in, the level I'm looking at is this psychological level here of 102, because normally when you go through a psychological number, when price trades through a psychological number, it tends to have a test of this number or this level, and then decision is made. Maybe price decides to go to the upside or decides to move to the downside. So that's how I look at psychological levels. So price came through, you have a test of this area, and then it moved to the downside. Price came through, we had this area tested, and then it moved to the downside. So you can go back in time as well. So price came through, you had this area tested, and you had to move to the downside. So price keeps doing stuff like this, and you can go back in time just to check and see how it works. So if you put the psychological level here, you'll probably see the same thing, tested, and then a drop. So that's what I'm looking at when I use psychological levels. So right now price went through 102, so the next level I'm looking at has to be 103 right here. So price could do this impulse, give us a correction around 102, and if there's that inability for prices to go through 102, then we should see prices moving to 103. Now if price does something like this, so if we get a test of say 102 for prices to move again to the upside to test 103, then we could see a trend building up. So this could signify on a trend to the upside, and we'll keep maintaining this trend until the trend line gets violated. So that's one possibility I'm looking at on the DXY. So another possibility, or the second possibility, is we had prices moving to the downside. So we had this sells, and for me, so once you have prices moving to the downside, you have a breakout like this. So it's not okay for you to say price is just going to continue to the upside, because this could simply be a pullback for these guys to resume sales again. So we could see maybe this and an inability to go above 103, and you see prices dropping again to the downside. So that's a possibility. So two possibilities I'm looking at on the DXY. The first possibility, you have prices moving to the upside, and if these buyers are really serious and they intend to take prices as high as possible, you could see prices pulling back to areas like this, like the psychological level, for you to see buyers stepping in again. You get another pullback, you see buyers stepping in. So that's possibility number one. Possibility number two, because we have price moving to the downside and it's selling, and this could simply be a pullback on higher time frames like the weekly and stuff like that. What you're looking at, say on the daily time frame, as a violation of the trend, and you're expecting prices to go to the upside. When you look on the weekly time frame and the monthly time frame, this could simply be a pullback to a bigger move. So you have this move and this pullback for prices to sell again to the downside. So that's another possibility I'm looking at. So if this has to happen, where you have this massive move, pullback, and for prices to sell, so what I'll be looking out for is, say, this impulsive move giving us a pullback, and then an inability for that pullback to make new highs or to take out areas like this. So if I see this setup, or if I see a combination of this, it just tells me there's that inability, and then prices will probably drop to the downside. So right now on the daily time frame, price is moving to the upside. So I'm going to maintain this movement to the upside and see if we can test 103. But as price is moving to the upside, I'll look at the characteristics of this price movement. So if it's coming back, giving us pullbacks and then making highs, I'll take note of all these things, because this could signify price continuation to the upside. So I'll pay attention to all these things and see how to trade it. Now, with these possibilities in mind, where you could get a pullback and a continuation to the upside, or you get a pullback and an inability for prices to take out this area and you see this drop, I'll use this same principle. So I'll use this probabilities to look at other pairs and see what trading decisions we have or what trading opportunities we have. So the first one I'll look at is US30. So I'm going to put this right here. So let's look at US30 from the daily time frame, and I don't think I'll waste a lot of time on lower time frames today, because this price action is the same thing we looked at, I think, last week. So let's get this done and over with. So let's look at US30. You had massive moves to the upside on the daily time frame. We had a pullback, we had this inability, we had this rejection from the buyers, giving us this impulsive buys. So currently what's happening on US30 is a consolidation right here, and this is something I like to see on higher time frames or just on any time frame. So once I look at, say, a trend line with prices moving to the upside, there is a pullback, there's an impulse, there's a correction or a pullback, then we could see prices moving again to the upside. Now, how do we get involved on a pair like US30? For us to get involved, let's say with buys or with sells, we need to understand where price is at and where price is most likely going to gravitate to. So looking at it from the daily time frame, we had this impulsive buys, we had a pullback, we've had an impulsive buy, and we've had this pullback. Now this pullback is sitting on top of this psychological level of 42,000, and this is something that's very important as well. Once you have buys coming in, you have a test of this trend line, you have a massive move, you have another test of the trend line. So once I see a reaction like this around a psychological level, it makes this point an area of concern for me. So I pay attention to this area just to see what's actually happening at that point. So once I can tell that there's a consolidation here, there's that inability for prices to go below this point, there's a psychological level here of 42,000, and price hasn't really gone below 42,000, price hasn't traded below 42,000 properly, it means there's still a possibility for us to have buys on this pair to test 43,000. So for us to get this buys so we can test 43,000, now there's a trend line here, there's a first touch, second touch, and I don't trade off of the touches, so I don't go off of the first touch, second touch, third or the fourth one. Price can bounce off of my trend line even 10 times and I'm still going to buy if it comes to that area, aligning it with the psychological levels on certain things and the pattern I'm looking at as well. So just looking at this on the daily time frame, here we had a pullback to this area. So right now I'm looking at this pullbacks coming in to this trend line, combining it with the psychological level. So if price finds it difficult to go below this point, we should see prices moving all the way to 43,000. So that's the possibility I'm looking at on US30. Now that's the first possibility. So the second possibility has to be, because there's always two sides to the coin, so with this massive consolidation and these buys that came in, so if there's that inability for buyers to take prices all the way to 43,000, we could see this violation happening. You get a pullback and you look for sales. So that's the possibility I'm looking at as well on US30. So there's always two sides to the coin. There's always a possibility where you can have, say, these buys, and there's a possibility where you can have the sales. Now it's always very important for you to position yourself, say, for the buys and for the sales. So look at it from both sides and not just from, say, one side. So you can be inclined to one direction. So yes, the overall movement on US30 is to the upside, but there's also a possibility that this consolidation here could see prices breaking out to the downside, giving you a pullback, and for prices to drop again to 41,000. So looking at those levels looking at those levels, looking at the psychological levels on US30, right now we're sitting above 42,000. The next level price can go to, if it doesn't break below 42,000, it has to be 43,000. And for this to happen, we should see prices pulling back, giving us a test of the trend line and giving us a test again of this psychological level. So multiple, if price keeps testing this area multiple times and it finds it difficult to go below this area, we could see prices moving to the upside. So that's pretty straightforward on US30. I'll look at, say, lower time frames, let's say the 8 hours and maybe the 4 hours. We'll look at the 8 hour and the 4 hour to see what's happening. So let's come to an area like this. So on the daily time frame, this right here looks like a consolidation, and I keep saying this thing. So once a consolidation happens, you need to have a pattern that you can trade from a consolidation. So I have a pattern I look at during consolidations, and I can take trades from this. I can scale in while price is consolidating as well. So we have this massive consolidation here, and all it's telling us is buyers, 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 buyers. Combining it with a trend line, if we find it difficult to go below this point, you could see prices moving all the way to 43,000. So that's something I'm paying attention to on US30. So we can look at this on, say, the 4 hour time frame as well. Let me see. Let's look at the 4 hour time frame. So the 4 hour time frame and the 8 hour time frame on US30 is the same thing. So massive consolidation. So once price is consolidating, it's very important you buy once price gets to the lowest point. So you're looking for buys around this point. So we could see this happening and then further buy again to the upside. So that's it for US30. And let's see, that's the 4 hour time frame. I'll probably look at the hourly time frame, but there's not a lot I can just do on the hourly time frame right now because price is in the massive consolidation, and once price is in this consolidation, it makes it difficult to look at a time frame like the hourly time frame. So all I can do on this time frame is trade using this principle of, say, ranges. So you have price probably moving like this, coming into a range and stuff like this. You want to buy once price is closer to an area like this, and you want to sell once price is closer to an area like this. But then you need to combine this with other stuff to make informed decisions. So let's look at this again. Let's give it one more time. Look at it on the daily. Yeah. All right. So still on the daily time frame, long term for me on US30 has to be buys unless this trend line gets violated. So if the trend line gets violated, and then the buy buyers for me switches from buys to sells. So we're sitting again on top of this psychological level of 42,000. If price breaks below this area and takes out this guy, or takes out these guys here, so you have buyers here, you have buyers here as well. If price goes below this point, taking out all the stop losses here, then we could see something like this, a test of 42,000, and you see prices dropping again to the downside. So that's it for US30. I think it's quite easy, it's quite straightforward, and it's not different from what we were looking at last week, because once we did the analysis last week, I remember saying we had this massive move, we had a pullback, we had this massive move, and so we should be expecting pullbacks to come in so we can resume with the buy. So at this point, I would say if you're trading US30 and you've not had opportunities, and if you're struggling within this area, there's a simple reason for that. So if you have prices moving to the upside, there's a pullback move to the upside. So once you establish a trend line like this, it's always best for you to wait for prices to tap on this trend line, showing you that inability to move to the downside. Then you can buy from that point. So this becomes your consolidation, or this becomes your pullback, and it's quite difficult for you to buy here and take out an area like this. It's quite difficult for you to buy here to take out an area like this. And once I said taking out these areas, I mean taking out these areas impulsively. So it's very difficult if you try to buy around an area like this. So That's why this buys here might be a little bit difficult to take out this. So we'll wait for prices to pull back again to the trend line, testing the psychological level, and we'll see if there's a possibility for us to take buys from that area. Alright, cool. So that's it for US30. Let's look at the next pair, and that has to be NAS100. So with NAS100, this is easy as well. So the same thing, we looked at this last week, and I'm just going to pay more attention to what's happening. So on the daily time frame for NAS100, you see prices tapping here. You see this impulsive move to the upside. There's a pullback that came in, reaction at this point, massive move again to the upside. So going back to what I said on NAS100, once you establish a trend line that you're working with already, it's always very important for you to wait for prices to pull back to that trend line, giving you a test of the trend line and the possibility for prices to move to the upside. So that's how I look at trends, or that's how I look at trend lines. Now I'm going to show you this real quick. If you saw this as a pullback and an attempt to buy here, you see how difficult it was to take out these highs. So it was the same thing. If this is a pullback that is coming in, and this area right here, it might be very difficult for you to buy here to take out these highs. So the best way to attack, say, NAS100, or the best way to look for trading opportunities on NAS100 is understanding what's happening and what's most likely going to happen. So right now we're trading we're trading below 20,000, which is a psychological level right here. So price went through the psychological level, pulled back, price has tested the psychological level, so we should expect prices to drop. To have a test of this trend line and a possible move again to the upside to take out this area like this. So if this happens, then it gives you a similar move that happened here, taking out those highs. So those are the possibilities I'm looking at on NAS100, and I'll probably just look at this on the daily time frame. There's no need going say on lower time frames. I could go to lower time frames and see. So let's say we look at the 8-hour time frame. I'll put this on the 8-hour time frame. So on the 8-hour time frame, as you step to lower time frames, the picture becomes clearer. So I'm going to show you this really quick. So we can use previous price action to anticipate and trade once we get setups next week, and I'll show you. So you have this impulsive buys here. You had price pulling back, pulling back, pulling back, pulling back right here. Once this pullback got taken out, now you had this impulsive buys. So it's the same thing. Now price is pulling back like this. So we should expect this to take out this area and pull back to an area like this, so we can buy impulsively. So every buy, so if you try to buy here, it's quite difficult to take out these highs. You try to buy here, it's difficult to take out these highs. But once price gets to its trend line, showing you now that inability to move prices to the downside, you take those buys. Prices is above the psychological level, you're looking for scalings and stuff like this. It makes it very easy for you to spot the next possible move. So using this previous price action, we could see this sellers coming in. So for us to get involved in a position like NAS100 next week, we need to wait for these sales to complete so we can do the buys. I'll clean this real quick. Impulsive buys, temporal sales. Once the sales completed, impulsive buys again, temporal sales. Once it completes, we look for buys again. So that's what I'm looking at on NAS100. I could look at lower time frames just to show you what's happening. So let's clean this. And as we step down to lower time frames, I'm going to move, say, the psychological level. So right now I have it on 18,000. So it's currently on 20,000. So I'll do 21,000. So at 21,000. So this is the move I'm looking at. Impulse, temporal sell correction, impulse, temporal sell correction, and then another impulse to test 21,000. Now if this happens, you see we'll be taking out this high, and we'll be taking out this high as well, just to test 21,000, and that's very powerful, and that's a powerful move I'm looking at there. So if we get the pullback, so if price pulls back to this trend line and it doesn't break to the downside like this violation thing, if it maintains that trend line, so if price pulls back and maintains this trend line, we should expect prices to test 21,000, which is an area like this. So that's those are possibilities I'm looking at on NAS100. I'll probably look at the 4-hour and the hourly time frame real quick just to see what's happening. So let's do the 4-hour, and I'll look at the reaction around the psychological level to see if there's anything that makes sense around there. All right, cool. So looking at it from the 4-hour time frame, massive move to the upside, temporal sales coming in, temporal sales, kind of a range break, testing this area of 20,000. If price stays around this area and it doesn't go above this area, we could see the drop coming in to then confirm with what's happening on the daily time frame. So you're looking at the daily time frame, for something like this. So let's see, you're looking at the daily time frame for something like this. So we could expect this to sell so we can buy from that. So that's the 4-hour time frame. Now let's look at the hourly real quick. Let's look at the hourly. As I promised you guys, I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this because it's the same thing to what we saw last week, and all we're waiting for is just this pullbacks to come in, and we're looking at it from, say, the daily time frame, which is the highest time frame I look at. So that's going to make it difficult as well to take these trades, because you need to be patient and wait for prices to pull back. For these prices to pull back, it's going to take a couple of days as well. So just be patient. If you're looking at the long-term move on NAS100, which has to be the buys, wait for the sellers to come in. Once it completes, then you can go in for the buys. All right, so let's look at, say, the S&P 500. Let's look at the S&P. Let's see. All right, guys, so the S&P 500 is quite similar to NAS100. So looking at it, so let's see, first principle, if price rejects at an area like this, let me see, if price rejects at an area like this of 5,700, we should expect prices to move all the way to 5,800, just going off of psychological levels. That's one principle. Now, combining this principle with the trend lines, you'll see the reasons why I'm not taking these buys here, and it's the same reason why I didn't take the buys on NAS. If I can put this on the daily time frame. All right, so if I can put this on the bigger time frame, so looking at NAS is the same principle I'm using to avoid trades like this, because if you buy here, it might be very difficult to take out this area or this area, and you see price pulling back to take prices to the upside. So that's what I'm looking at on NAS and on the S&P. I'll go back to the S&P just so we can look at it better and see if there's anything lining up and how to get involved on the pair like this. So the best way to get involved on the S&P 500 is simply waiting for prices to pull back to this trend line. So I'm going to show you right here. Give me a second. So if we get prices to come back and test this trend line and probably this psychological level, and just showing you that there's this difficulty for prices to go below, then once prices starts trading again to the upside above, say, 5,700, you can buy that, and your first target could be 5,800, the next target could be 5,900, and it just depends on you, like how far you want to push this and how far you want to hold this. So that's what I'm looking at on the S&P 500. That's the daily time frame. So we might look at the 8 hours and say the 4. Let's say the 8 hour time frame. Same thing to what's happening on NAS. So I'm going to show you real quick. Impulsive buys. I don't know why this thing is giving me the massive colors. So we had impulsive buys, correction right around the psychological level. So this is the interaction thing I've been telling you guys around, and I like seeing prices interacting around the psychological level like this. It's very important for me because it tells me price is finding it difficult to go through that point, and it needs like a discount, it needs a better price so you can take off from there. So eventually you see sellers coming in to an area like this, and you see price taking off to the upside. So if you do the same thing, over here, you have this impulsive buys, you have this consolidation, so you should expect prices to drop to an area like this so we can take buys to the upside. So that's what I'm looking at on the S&P 500. So again, there's always two sides to the coin, so there's also a possibility for this trend line to get violated and you see prices trading to the downside. But my primary bias on the on the S&P is to see prices pulling back to the trend line, and then we take buys from that area to the upside. So let's look at it, say from the 4-hour time frame. 4-hour time frame. So bear in mind, why are you looking at this from the 4-hour time frame? So this guy, so the S&P, let me see. All right, this one. So looking at it from the 4-hour time frame, remember the S&P from the daily time frame is trending to the upside. So everything you see coming down, these are simply pullbacks. You have a consolidation, pullback, consolidation, expect a pullback for us to take buys to the upside. So once again, that's what I'm looking on the S&P. It's quite simple. I'll look at the hourly time frame. Let's see, hourly. So the hourly time frame, there's a lot of noise, and that's why I use the hourly time frame for my execution and not really for analysis. So you have an impulse, correction, impulse. Now, yeah, you have this correction, you have this break to the downside. It was impulsive as well. You have an impulsive move to the upside, you have a correction. We should expect this break for us to take prices again to the upside, or this consolidation for us to see prices moving to the upside. So that's it for the S&P 500. So I think coming into next week is going to be very easy looking at the S&P, NAS, US30 and other indices like this, because all I'm waiting for is just pullbacks to the trend line. I'll look for my setup and then I'm going in for those buys. And again, there's two sides to the coin, so it might sell as well, but I'm not looking at the sells. I'm more inclined to the buys on the S&P, NAS, US30. So let's look at the last one, and that has to be gold. So let's look at this. So we'll look at gold and we'll say analyze it from the daily all the way to the hourly, and keep it really simple. There's not a lot you can talk on this pair right now. So on the daily time frame, price is moving to the upside. So that's the first thing. Look at price, determine where price is going to, or where price is most likely going to go to, and what point price is trading at. So looking at it right now, we had price putting in higher highs and higher lows. That's a characteristic uptrend, higher highs and higher lows. So using this principle, you should expect this pullbacks coming in. You should expect this pullbacks coming in, and for prices to move to the upside. So that's what I'm looking at on gold on the daily time frame. Now there's also a possibility for this to sell. So if this trend line for some reason gets violated like this, and you get a pullback or a correction, you could see prices selling to the downside. But if we do not take out this trend line, so let's say the trend line stays intact and you have this impulse, correction, impulse, correction, we should expect something like this. And for prices to move to the upside, the next level price has to test first has to be 2700. So that's what I'm looking at on gold. We can step down to lower time frames and see what's happening. So like say the 8 hours. So on the 8-hour time frame, so let's see, 8-hour time frame, impulse, correction, and this could spike down. So you could see a spike here and price moving again to the upside. So first we need to take out these highs, and the next area to test has to be 2700. So that's my bias on gold. That's what I'm looking out for coming into next week. Price is pulling back to the trend line, giving us a test around that area. You could get a spike to even test 2600, but once price comes back in, you're taking it all the way to the next area. So that's it on gold. I'll look at say the 4-hour time frame on the hourly. So let's see the 4 hours. Okay, so on the 4-hour time frame, now this is tricky on this time frame. So we went through this psychological level and we haven't tested this level. So we went through impulsively. There's a correction, so we could see prices breaching out to test say 2600, and an inability for price to go through 2600 simply means we could see prices coming back all the way to 2700. So I still have this bullish bias on gold unless that trend line really gets violated. So if not, then I'll still keep my bullish bias on gold. All right, so let's look at the hourly. Yeah, so there's a lot of noise on the hourly time frame, but what you can see, move to the upside, break, consolidation. So we could expect a further move to the downside, then prices start taking off to the upside. So there's always two sides to the coin, guys. In as much as I'm looking for buys on gold and all these other pairs, there's a high possibility we could see sales coming in. So I explained this already once we did the DXY. So once we did the DXY, I explained it already. Reasons why you could see buys or sells. So I'm going to show you again. I can't tell you for all certainty where this buys is going to stop, but I know at some point you'll see an inability from the buyers. Once you have this inability from the buyers, it's a clear indication that prices coming to the downside, and you can use this to look for buying opportunities on the indices and on gold. Now if this continues to the upside impulsively, then all this is doing is probably giving you pullbacks on these other time frames, on these other pairs. So let's do something like this. This is the S&P, so we'll look at the daily. So if the DXY starts pulling back to sell, so let's say if the DXY turns and starts selling, then it makes it easy for us to look at say NAS. We'll wait for the pullbacks as well, pullbacks to come in, you look for the buys. So that's what I'm looking at on NAS. Same thing on the S&P500, you wait for the pullbacks, you go in for the buys. Same thing for, let me see, I think US30. Yeah, same thing for US30. Wait for prices to test this trend line, psychological level, you look for buys. And I think the last one, gold, I'll put this on the daily time frame as well. So that's on the daily. So pull back for us to go for buys. So guys, that's it for me. That's it for my market focus. There wasn't like a lot I had to do today because price hasn't really changed a lot compared to what we had last week. So all I'm waiting for this, like I'm just waiting for pullbacks to come in. I'm waiting for pullbacks on gold, waiting for pullbacks on US30, pullbacks on NAS, pullbacks on the S&P 500, and then let's say on the DXY, I'm still expecting the DXY as well to sell. So there's still a possibility for these sales to come in. I'm not really convinced this trend line has come to an end simply because we have said this break out of it. So there's still a possibility for us to see the DXY selling, and once it starts selling, we'll see those other pairs buying. So the S&P, NAS, US30 and gold and stuff like that. So if the DXY keeps moving to the upside, if you see this movement to the upside, then you should expect gold to sell, US30 to sell, NAS to sell, and the S&P to sell. So these are the pairs I'm really paying attention to while looking at the DXY. Alright guys, if you have any question, like, use the question section below and ask your questions. And remember guys, trade patiently and stay consistent with everything you do. And if you found this interesting, don't forget hit the like and subscribe button. See you during the next one. Bye for now.